How you doing tonight? What's up, Yella in the chat? Wait, where's my chat? Hold on. Oh, there we go. There's my chat. What's up, guys? Meyer, Yellow Dog. We got HM. You gotta, dude. You gotta remind me what your name is on the Discord, because I know that I know this, but I cannot summon it up for the life of me. But I'm here. Oh, Tristan's here. What's up, guys? Glad you guys made it. It's not too late for you. I don't know how many of you guys are Eastern time zone. Not that it's that late in the Eastern time zone, but it's late for me, normally. But it was good. Okay, gotcha. All right, so we're here. We are. Yeah, Manga Girl does sound like an internet troll name. Are you not? You're not actually a Manga Girl. I guess manga is actually how it's pronounced, but that's just kind of a nerd thing. All right, where's my tab? There it is. North Carolina, born and raised. I'm in New Jersey, so a little bit north, but same time zone. All right. Yeah, Ron Stewart has North Jersey locked up. I'm hoping to monopolize South Jersey based Dynasty content. So far, no competition that I'm aware of. So we got this startup draft. Obviously, we're definitely going to go into that, talk a little bit about some of my thoughts on the startup, which is still going strong. Any deadline questions are obviously welcome, and maybe I'll throw out a couple more names that didn't make the cut for the video this week. But yeah, we'll do that. I'm gonna run a little experiment at the end of the stream because I am interested in potentially streaming underdog drafts in the future, and I'm not sure if my computer can handle it. So I would rather test it out on you guys, where if my computer crashes or my stream dies in the middle of it, it'll be fine, and not in front of like hundreds of random people. So that is what we're gonna do at the end. I will close out all the rest of the show, make sure we're all set, and then we're gonna jump into one of the playoff best ball drafts, and we'll see how it goes. I tried to close out as many other things as possible so that I have RAM and CPU, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's talk about this startup draft. I think I have it here. Yep. So, no, you guys aren't randoms. You guys are the inner circle. You're my boys. So we're not going to do power rankings yet. Maybe I'll rank the draft afterward and see, kind of decide how everybody did. I need to resize this window because it's like not fitting here. Hold on. So we're 11 rounds in. Come on, dude. Get smaller. We're 11 rounds into this thing. I mean, I don't think anybody is having a particularly bad draft. There we go. I don't think anybody's having a particularly bad draft. I think that there's a couple selections that I probably would have done differently, but obviously my rankings are not gospel, and we're predicting into the future here. So I think the most interesting wrinkle in this type of a startup draft is knowing that the points that are scored now don't matter, because psychologically, or somewhere deep down, we know that a lot of players that are scoring a lot of points right now are going to be valued a lot lower once the season is over. But it can be hard to act that way with how we currently value these players. Like Alvin Kamara was like the RB3 last year, and then this offseason he was going later than he went in this startup, and he's now a year older than he was last offseason when he was going later than he is in this startup. So it's like, obviously there are some factors there. I guess there was some question about Kamara potentially getting cut. There was probably some kind of suspension thing, because there's always some suspension thing with him. But in general, like I think Alvin Kamara will probably go later than this in startups that are done in the spring. I think Derrick Henry will probably go a little bit later than this. Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. But there are definitely guys here that I think are going to go later. I think there are guys that will probably move up a good bit. But some of my thoughts, as I was just jotting down just some random observations. One thing I think we definitely got wrong was letting Yellow Dog get Mahomes at 12. I think that was kind of silly. You know, we think about Mahomes versus other picks. And I fell for this too, of moving Mahomes down maybe a little bit too much. But, you know, CJ Stroud, right? We know CJ Stroud is not as good a player as Patrick Mahomes. And so we would at least hope that if you're going to draft him ahead of Mahomes in a startup, that he's at least offering a significant scoring advantage over Mahomes. And that just has not been the case. Like he's not a great fantasy quarterback this year either. And so you're not buying the better production. You're not buying the better talent. So you're really just buying him because he's younger. But I mean, if we realistically think through like how much longer Patrick Mahomes is going to play football, your dynasty league is probably going to fold before Patrick Mahomes stops playing football. It's really not a consideration. So I don't think it makes sense to take Stroud over Mahomes. I don't think it makes sense really to take Love over Mahomes. As far as I'm concerned, these guys are all versions of the same thing. They are quarterbacks that aren't going to run that much. Honestly, Mahomes is more of a scrambler than either of them. And some years they're going to run hot on touchdown rate, and those are the years that they're going to be the more valuable player. You know, we saw the market way overcorrect on Justin Herbert and then move him right back up because he's talented. And when quarterbacks that are like known to be elite start playing elite for a couple of games, it's really easy for them to gain a lot of value. Whereas quarterbacks that are not necessarily thought of that way, when they string together a couple of good games, it's kind of like, well, you know, they just had a hot streak. We'll see. You know, Baker Mayfield is an example of that. Like if Justin Herbert was having the season that Baker Mayfield is having, he would be like the 103 in Dynasty. If CJ Stroud was having the season Baker Mayfield is having, he would be like the 103 in Dynasty. So, and I don't think it's wrong that Baker's valued where he's valued, because I do think that he's more situation dependent than other elite quarterbacks. I think he needs some things to be kind of in place for him. At least that's the track record that he's built up. You know, maybe he has totally changed his game. Maybe he's a totally different player. I'm still somewhat skeptical. I'm willing to discount him a little bit on that skepticism. But that being said, I would have taken Mahomes over Stroud and Love. You're obviously not upset to get any of those guys. Love the Drake May pick at 201. That is very much in my wheelhouse. I think in a tight end premium, how do I have it ranked? I think in tight end premium, I have Bowers ahead of Amon-Ra and Nico, and I think I would keep it that way. Yeah, I've got Bowers at 14. I think that's where I would keep him. I would take him over those guys personally, but really no bad picks there in that second round. Herbert, Puka, Kyler. I mean, that feels like a teardrop to me, from Kyler to Marvin Harrison, and Brian Thomas feels like a little bit of a teardrop. I'm still team Brian Thomas over Marv, but I understand it. Achane at RB2 is how I have it ranked. Yeah, I've got Achane at RB2. That's how I have it ranked. I don't know how much anybody was using my rankings like as they're going through here, but that is how I have it ranked. And I think it's really close with him, with Hall, with Gibbs, and Walker as well. I think the price on Barkley is a little aggressive. So that's one pick I don't necessarily love. You know, you look at what Barkley did this year, or is doing this year, it's really not that dissimilar to what Joe Mixon is doing. It's just that Barkley is thought of as such a better player, and he is cooler. He makes cooler plays. He jumps over people backwards. But in reality, I don't think there's that much of a difference between Barkley and Mixon from a fantasy standpoint. Like Mixon is only like a year older. Neither of them appear to have, gone over the hill. So I would still prefer Barkley being the younger player, being the guy that I do think is overall more talented. But I just think when you look and see Mixon going over 3 full rounds after Barkley, like the advantage that you have to derive from that 28-year-old running back next year is going to have to be so huge to pass up on really premium players that are younger, like George Pickens, like some of these quarterbacks maybe. So I understand the pick in one sense, but I think in terms of I think the wide receivers are going to dry up here faster than the running backs, and I think I'd prefer to go wide receiver there or another position. I will say that I am noticing already there's a heavier trend towards taking running backs early. Like I feel like this whole wave of running backs here in like rounds 7 and 8 and 9, that was all kind of pushed down a round or two last offseason, all these running backs. And it's mostly the same names like Brian Robinson, Ramondre Stevenson, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Tony Pollard. All these guys were going a little bit later. So that renaissance is real. I'm not sure how much of it is us still being biased towards the points that are currently being scored and how much of it is just us shifting the way that we see these positions, because there's been such a renaissance in the running game and there's been such bad quarterback play. We've been burned by these wide receiver injuries. I'm not sure what it is. Probably a combination of all those things. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the running backs really do play out once the point scoring season is over. I think maybe our position is a little aggressive on some of these guys. I'm not sure who specifically, but just in general, I think maybe a little aggressive overall with the running backs. But it's going to be dictated. It's weird because we are within the market, we affect the market, but also what we do is sort of dictated by the market. Like if the market says all the good running backs are going to be gone by the end of round 9 or round 10, then you have to take your running backs there. If the market says we're going to push running backs and draft wide receivers high again, then you can wait on running back and take them later. So you kind of have to be at the whims of the market unless you're willing to do what I sometimes do in a startup, which is just completely draft for value and just kind of be comfortable taking a 0 at a position, like literally taking no running backs or taking one running back in the startup and then just going on to, make a trade later, see if you can make a trade later. I've done that with some success before. In this one, I don't have a tight end. I might take a tight end. I don't know. I don't feel compelled to. I don't feel like I have to be drafting my starting lineup. When you're doing a startup, you don't have to keep the team that you draft when you draft it, especially early in the offseason. So I might draft a tight end who's, Cade Otton is really the only interesting tight end that's even left. And I'm not sure I'm going to take him over some of the other names that are here. So I'll probably end up just punting. I don't really know what to do with Cade Otton. What do I do with this window? It's in the way. There we go. I feel like teams are running the ball more than they did last year. I don't know. It could be because of the points I see, but that's how it feels to me. No, I think that's true. I think it is statistically true that teams are running more. If you look at the fantasy points per game, if you look at running back versus wide receiver, running backs have a way bigger advantage this year than they've ever had, or like that they've had in a very long time, as I understand it. So it's a real thing. If you look at the highest value players, like the value above replacement or the wins above replacement players, that list is riddled with running backs, and there aren't nearly as many wide receivers making that list. And it's a combination of factors, right? It's like you have Lamb's quarterback dealing with injury. You have Puka was out with injuries. Nico was out with injuries. Malik Neighbors had injuries, a bad offense. Marvin Harrison, slow start. Brian Thomas, injuries plus quarterback injuries. Rashee Rice, season-ending injury. A.J. Brown missed games. Garrett Wilson apparently still has a bad quarterback. So there's a lot of these different factors. Tyreek Hill and Waddle both lost Tua for parts of the season. Chris Olave had the concussions. T. Higgins missed games. Like, if you look at all these wide receivers that were taken, there are reasons why almost all of them have struggled, mostly injury, but other factors too. I think we will see that bounce back to some extent, but this defensive meta that is kind of forcing teams into the run more is probably still going to stay to some degree. So that's going to be one of the big priorities, I think, when startup season comes around, is trying to kind of decode that and figure out what's the optimal team build going to look like next year. Is it just going to be a carbon copy of this year? Because that almost never works out. So we're gonna have to figure that out. I do plan to do a lot more startup oriented content next off season. I only really did the one video this past year, and it ended up being my most viewed video by far. It kind of had like a slow start, and then that slow start turned into an absolute like snowball effect towards the end of the summer, and that video actually has 23,000 views now. So I will definitely be making more startup related content because I do enjoy videos getting over 20,000 views. That's pretty fun. Yeah, you haven't heard that said before. I mean, I definitely didn't coin that term, but it is very much, it's very much a thing. Like, offenses do something, defenses adjust to it, like that too high safety thing that's been run, and that's part of what's forcing teams back into these run situations. I don't really consider myself a ball knower. I would like to learn more of the terminology, especially how defenses run in these different zones and stuff. That is not something that I'm super well versed in because I didn't ever really play football or anything. But yeah, I mean, everything ebbs and flows. Like, as the NFL shifted more towards the passing game, defenses shifted more into these like nickel defenses. They started investing more in these tweener linebacker safety types. Defensive backs got smaller, linebackers got smaller and faster. Eventually, if the natural progression of that is, if these defensive backs and linebackers are all smaller and faster guys, okay, well then we're going to switch back to the run and we're going to beat you physically because you don't have the guys to tackle our running back, right? That's Derrick Henry has made an entire career out of exploiting this, where he is like, Derrick Henry is like the quintessential like 90s running back that has been dropped into a modern NFL offense, and these like 225-pound linebackers just like bounce off of him. So it all evens back out, right? But I think we're seeing this pendulum shift back in favor of the defense a little bit, back in favor of the run game a little bit. And the question is just, how severe is that going to be long term? And I don't know. I don't think any of us really know. Other random notes I have, the Anthony Richardson pick at 405 was bold. I will just say that that's bold. I don't think that I could bring myself to take Anthony Richardson over Dak, Baker, McCarthy, or Goff. I think after that, it's probably fair game. I don't think I could take him over Odunze, Devonta Smith, a couple of these other wide receivers, T. Higgins, Josh Downs. I don't think I'm quite there yet because, yes, he did look better in the game back. However, it's impossible to put the genie back in the bottle as far as the Colts were willing to give up on him. Maybe there's some revisionist history now that he was like always going to get back in the game and they were not actually going to leave him on the bench, and it was just to help him get right. I personally just think they put him back in because Flacco was such a disaster and it would have been a PR nightmare to keep starting him. I'm not convinced that they believe in Richardson as the guy, and I'm not convinced if Richardson ends up on another team that he's going to have the type of leash that he needs to develop. So I still think that there's risk. He's definitely regained some value from his floor of value, but I'm still not really willing to roll the dice on him really early in startups. So I can appreciate the standing on business there, but I'm not ready to go that far with Richardson. Also have to consider that the Jets are an absolute poverty franchise that have completely given up on themselves. So, you know, I'm not sure how impressive it is to beat the Jets these days. I panicked, saw I was on the clock. That's pretty funny. Mid conversation, I will say you don't need to panic when you're on the clock in a slow draft that is just a startup mock. I don't know if that's necessary, but certainly not a pick that's going to hurt you because it's not a real team. So fair enough. I like these wide receiver values in round 5. I'll be curious to see how this order of wide receivers actually shakes out once we get a consensus. You know, it goes on this huge run of Odunze, Smith, Downs, Higgins, JSN, Reed, Olave, Metcalf, Waddle. That is a lot of wide receivers in a row. A lot of promising young wide receivers that, for whatever reason, none of them have necessarily established themselves as difference makers this season. But some of them are kind of breaking out. Some of them are losing value and all kind of meeting in the middle. I think my favorites out of this group to invest in, I think, are going to be Downs, Higgins, Olave, and Waddle. Personally, I think Metcalf and JSN are both interesting. JSN's definitely been trending up. I think I'm not sure if either of the two of them is going to be able to separate from the other. Certainly think they're fine values here. I do think Olave is a guy that's worth sending out offers for. My friend sent me a chart. I don't have it to pull up right now. Maybe I can post it in the chat later. He's been doing these data visualizations, kind of showing game logs for wide receivers and showing what was their route rate in a game, how many dropbacks were there, how many targets did they get on those dropbacks, what was their target share. When you look at the chart and you really just see how those 2 bad games from Olave where he got the concussions in the first quarter really dragged him down from what otherwise was a very dominant volume season. But he ends up in this weird situation where the Saints come out in the first 2 games and just blow the doors off of teams and don't need to throw. Then they get into this like defensive battle with the Eagles in week 3. Olave actually does catch a touchdown in that game. And then he gets hurt. Then he comes back. He has a couple decent games. He gets hurt again. I think that his season, I think it's being overstated how much of a disappointment he was when really he got some really bad variants. I think the concussions are a legit concern to some degree. But as we've seen with Tua, you do get a lot of leeway in the market for that. And I'm not sure we're really at a point where there's real career risk here. I don't really think the talk of retirement is anything real at all. I don't think that's a consideration. So I'm probably not going to factor that in too much. I'm just looking at him as, out of this group, clearly so far in his career, he's been the better dominant target earner. He has been pretty efficient even this year, over 2 yards per out run. I do love Josh Downs, as you all know. Higgins, if he can stay healthy, that's the big thing for him. He does actually have a soft tissue injury history that I wasn't fully aware of how insane it is, but like he has basically the same injury, hamstring injury, like 5 out of the last 7 years. So that is a concern. Also don't know where he's going to play, but if he goes to the Patriots, I think that could be huge for him. And then Jalen Waddle is the real wild card here, where I just don't understand how a player that has his first 3 years turns in this season. I don't understand how he goes from being like super efficient number 2 wide receiver beside Tyreek Hill to being alphaed by Jonnu Smith. I don't understand that. But I'm going to try to trust the longer track record with him and just close my eyes and hit the button as I did in this draft. I do think DJ Moore stands out as a pretty terrible value in relation to these other wide receivers. as far as being the oldest one of the group, having the most disappointing season of the group. I don't love Moore here. I feel like he's kind of this in-between player at this point where he's going to be 28 next year, and now he's no longer young and he's no longer a dominant scorer. I feel like if I'm going to draft an older player, I'd rather just go for the moon and take like a McCaffrey or a Hill, or I would rather just veer towards the younger side and take like a Tank Dell, take a player whose value is more insulated in like a Brandon Ayuk. So I do struggle with DJ Moore, who, I mean, he had a great season last year. Maybe this is all just a chemistry problem, but I don't know what the future holds for him. And, you know, when you have a wide receiver that's 28 at this, going into his 28 season, you can't really risk any more wasted years, because at this point it's all down. He's only going down. He's only depreciating from here. He's going to become, you know, next year he'll be down another round and a half when he's 29, and then he'll be on death's door by 30, and you'll be buying him for, you know, late seconds for your contenders. So it comes fast. I don't think I'd take him quite that high. A couple other things. Oh, I got to roast Yella on the stream. I did it in the chat, but I'm going to roast him here too. Travis Kelce in the 8th round is just deranged behavior. Absolutely out of pocket to take Travis Kelce over Mark. Well, I mean, you took Andrews too. To take him over Pollard, to take him over Godwin, to take him over Darnold or Kupp or Evans. Travis Kelce this year is currently scoring 13 points per game, and that is with Rashee Rice missing half of the games that he's played so far. Now, Rashee Rice might miss half the games next year too, but the games he misses will be at the beginning of the year, and Travis Kelce will be back to his 2 for 29 stat lines by the time the fantasy playoffs come around. On top of that, the guy is 35 years old. He's 35 years old. He could lose it at any time. He could also just retire. Like, I really struggle to believe that what does he need to play football for anymore? Like, he has so many endorsements. He's dating Taylor Swift. He's doing a reality TV show. I don't understand why he needs to play. Now, look, I think it's probably over 50% that he plays next year, but I just don't see how a non-difference making tight end who absolutely has one more season left at most, I just don't see how that's worth an 8th round pick. I just don't know what it's doing for you, especially when you can get Andrews. Like, you don't need both of these guys. So obviously your team overall is good. I like your picks. I just think that one is puzzling. All right, let's see there's some chat here. I mean, is this even true? I feel like until pretty recently, Pollard was outscoring Kelce in tight end premium, like, pretty easily. I mean, it doesn't have to be Pollard specifically, but I think there are a number of players that I'd rather have. My thoughts on Jaden Reed are that he's a fun player who has a limited role, and so he's gonna have some big games when it's like his time to shine, when the Packers run a lot of 11 personnel, pass heavy game scripts. He's never going to be the guy that people wanted him to be after he had a couple of big games early this year. I think his price here is fine. I would definitely take Olave over him. I would definitely take I'd probably take Metcalf over him. But overall, I think this is the area that he belongs in. Tristan says, funny story on Kelce. My wife convinced a guy in our one quarterback, half point, no tight end premium league to give his mid first for Kelce right before the Bills game where he sucked. Hey, good for her. Your wife plays Dynasty? That's pretty sick. Thoughts on Jake Ferguson as a 1-year reload, tight end 1 in 2025. My take on Jake Ferguson is probably not that. It's definitely possible. I just don't. I'm not really a big believer in Jake Ferguson as a talent. I don't really think he's anything special. I think he's just a guy in a role, and that role has been good for fantasy. And then we see every time he misses any game action, Luke Schoonmaker comes in and just does the same thing. So I think you're buying a role more than a player, and that always worries me when you have a guy that's injured. You have a team that's sort of in transition, where they could make some big investments to try to bring in weapons for Dak. So I don't really like holding players like Jake Ferguson, where I don't really think he has any staying power at all. So I wouldn't be targeting him. I mean, I think it's definitely possible that he regains some value in the offseason. If he survives the NFL draft and free agency, he's going to regain value. I just don't know if the bet is worth the upside there, because even if he does survive all of that, he's not going to be a top 5 tight end, and he's not going to ever become as valuable. He's not ever going to be worth like a first round pick. So I think the downside is greater than the upside. I think he's a guy that's just sort of worth like a mid-second in tight end premium, and that's probably what he will remain until he inevitably is cast aside for the next generic white tight end. Yeah, so all this is true. Schoonmaker is quietly making some waves. That's definitely possible. Dak Merchant, just like the tight end before him, for sure. Thinking Dallas tight end back to Dalton Schultz, how he dropped off after he left. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more of a role than anything. It's not that Ferguson has no ability. Like he has the ability to succeed in that spot. But he doesn't really have a resume that would suggest that he's a special tight end. And, you know, I do think it's very much Dak related. Yeah. So other tight ends, Theo Johnson. I mean, Theo Johnson's basically free, right? I mean, what does he cost? A mid-third round pick? You know, I wouldn't be going out of my way to necessarily get him. But if you think he's interesting, he's athletic, the Giants don't have a ton of going on, you get him thrown into some trades. Tucker Kraft, I think, is a little bit overvalued. I mean, in this startup, he wasn't really that expensive in this startup. Maybe the market is cooling on him after he had a goose egg game, but I do think that a lot of his big games this year were pretty fraudulent. Mostly just him being an outlet guy in high passing volume games. So I don't think, similar to Ferguson, I think he's a little more dynamic than Ferguson, but I think a little, they're pretty similar actually. I don't think that he's ever going to emerge as a true set it and forget it every week tight end. I don't think he's ever going to be like worth a first round pick. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5 tight end for a full season. I think he's more just a guy who's going to have some spike weeks because he's in a good passing game. He runs a lot of routes, and he's a big body that can catch passes in the end zone. So he's not a guy I'm actively avoiding, but I do think he's been overvalued. And I think if he does have a big game before the end of the year, I'll probably look to move the shares that I have left. Honestly, if I have Andrews on a rebuilding team, I'm not really worried about trying to turn him into another tight end. I would just be trying to cash out. I would just be looking for, can I get an early to mid second in tight end premium? That's probably what I would be doing. Yeah, I mean, Kraft definitely fits their system. I mean, I traded Mark Andrews for Tucker Kraft earlier this year, basically straight up. Now, at that point, I thought Mark Andrews was basically dead. It turns out he's not completely dead. He just has one foot in the grave. I ended up trading Kraft later on in a deal for David Njoku, so it doesn't really matter. What tight ends do you like? Not many of them. My answer is I like Brock Bowers. I like Trey McBride. I sort of like TJ Hawkinson at his new price. I like George Kittle for as long as he's in the NFL. I like David Njoku. And then I like the cheap ones. I like Hunter Henry. I like Let me pull up the tight ends here. I like the guys you can get at the end of your draft. Give me Hunter Henry. Give me, who else is even left, man? It's really gross. I think we need a reset at the position. I guess Johnny Smith. Give me Will Dissly. It's just that there's just a few tight ends that are actually going to matter, right? And then the rest of them are going to all kind of be bunched together. Like this is the most ridiculous thing. I have this league it's a start 9, half PPR, non tight end premium, right? So half PPR, non tight end premium. Tight ends don't score like any points in this format. And I had Kyle Pitts, and he was driving me insane early in the season. So I traded him. I traded him with Cam Akers for a 2027 first and Hunter Henry. And later that year, a couple weeks after that, right? Pitts has like 2 big games in a row. He has that big game where he catches 2 40-yard touchdowns. And this one guy in the chat who thinks it's so smart to hoard all the tight ends. He's not who I traded Pitts to, but he thinks it's so, his whole strategy is that he hoards tight ends. He has like Ferguson, Ingram, Kraft, Bowers, and someone else. And he's like, oh, I bet you wish you didn't trade Kyle Pitts. I bet you wish you didn't trade Kyle Pitts. Can't believe you traded him for a first round pick. Hunter Henry has scored 0.2 points per game less than Kyle Pitts this year. So I literally traded one tight end for another to get equal production plus a 2027 first on top. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. And that's pretty much how I feel about all the tight ends other than the like top names. And that's Bowers, that's McBride, Kittle. Those are your elite talents. Hawkinson, I've never thought is like truly elite, but he's good and he's in a really good offensive environment that is going to produce points for him once he gets healthy. So those are the guys I like. Kincaid is a fraud. Kyle Pitts is a fraud. Jake Ferguson is a fraud. Tucker Kraft is a fraud. Mark Andrews is old. Travis Kelce is old. Evan Ingram is old and a fraud. So no, I don't like most of the tight ends personally. That's just how I feel about it. That was my rant. Yellow Dog, I would say I'm mostly indifferent towards Trevor Lawrence at this point. Ambivalent is a word I would use. Apathetic. But I don't know about likes. He hasn't really given me any reason to like him lately. All right. Yo, Noah Gray is actually like an elite guy to have on your Dynasty Best Ball team. You know, you got a big roster, Dynasty Best Ball roster. Just throw Noah Gray at the end. That's a good time. Dude is useless and managed. In your Christian Minecraft server, Tristan, Dalton Kincaid sucks, bro. I'm sorry. He's just buns. I'm sorry. I traded him straight up for David Montgomery in a league. Oh, I see that's consensus. Actually, he went a full round after Montgomery in this. T-Hum says, oh, hey, welcome to the stream. Looking to acquire Puka in a league where I have a lot of tight end value. What is the most you'd add to McBride to get Puka as a heavy contender? Let's find out. Trey McBride, 1.5 base ones. Puka, 2.25 base ones, give or take. I'd probably try an early 2. Maybe an early 2 and a late 2 in value. Maybe somebody in the like Shakir zone. Tucker Kraft. I don't know why you would trade 2 tight ends for Puka Nacua. They probably wouldn't want that. McBride plus Tillman. I don't know, something like that. McBride plus Jameson Williams. Yellow Dog, Nick Foles is an American hero. All right, you take that back. I'm sorry, how many Super Bowl MVPs does Dalton Kincaid have? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, last thing I want to talk about on the startup right now. I'm sure I'll do another recap at some point. Maybe I'll rank the teams. My last question is, and this is not I don't have an answer to this question. This is just, I want to know what you guys think. Actually crazy that you have both of these guys that I suggested. I'd prefer to trade Tillman for what it's worth between the two. Okay. Anyway, my last question here, and again, I don't know the answer. Tyreek Hill, 5'12". Okay. Cooper Kupp, 9'8". Mike Evans, 9'11". Devontae Adams, 10'3". Does Tyreek Hill deserve to go 4 entire rounds ahead of these guys? I'm not sure. His scoring this year is identical to Jacoby Myers. So, like, obviously he's the most recent of this group to have like a nuclear blow up season, but like, are we confident enough that that's coming back, that he should go 4 rounds ahead of all of these other old elite or formerly elite wide receivers? I don't know. I don't feel great about it, but I do understand it. My camera's stuck. Hold on. Anyway, that's my question. All right. We're going to give this a try. I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. I'm not ending the stream, but I'm just saying all this stuff in case I try to load this and the internet crashes. So appreciate you guys. If you drop any more questions in the chat, I can answer them. If I crash, I will answer them in the Discord. But this has been fun hanging out. Really, really enjoy doing these. So I'm going to jump into this playoff best ball contest and just sort of talk through it. Because again, this is something I just want to try out because I want to see if I can make this work in the future, if my computer can handle it. If you guys are interested in sticking around and hearing kind of how the contest works and what it's all about, it's one of my absolute favorite times of the fantasy season is doing these playoff drafts. They're super fun to like conceptualize, and they're really fun to track during the actual NFL playoffs when you don't have fantasy teams. So I'm going to do one of these. So the situation with this is basically you draft with 6 people. 2 of the 6 are going to make it out of the first round, which is wildcard weekend. You get dropped into a group of 10 random teams. 2 of those teams are going to make it out of the divisional round to the conference round, where 1 out of 10 are going to make it out of that into the Super Bowl round. And then there are 150 teams in that. And the highest scoring team obviously wins, but there's payouts that go all the way through. So let's just enter. It's working so far. Are you guys still here? I haven't gotten any chats in a minute. So the situation here is like, basically you have to decide when you do these drafts, which teams are going to make the Super Bowl. And you just have to sort of play out the scenario as if that's what's going to happen. So it's about kind of picking your spot, having conviction on that, and then you can draft other teams that go totally against that. Like when I draft Ravens teams, I draft as if the Ravens are going to go to the Super Bowl. But if I draft Josh Allen, then in that universe, the Bills are going to go to the Super Bowl. So the idea is you have to pick and you have to kind of stay in your lane. And the reason I like these contests is because so many people don't know how to play them properly, where they just start taking random players from all assorted teams that have high projections, giving themselves a chance to make it out of the first round, but giving themselves a 0% chance to actually win the contest, which is pretty negative EV. So the idea, basically your number one priority is that you have to have a full lineup of 5 players that can play in the Super Bowl. You need to have a quarterback, at least 1 running back, and then at least two, three, at least, oh, you need one running back, two wide receiver / tight ends, and then you have a flex. So you can play two running backs. So I'm sitting here in the 3 spot. I'll probably take one of the Lions players. Now the tricky thing with these, yo, what's up, Theo? Welcome to the stream. We just got done talking a little bit about the startup mock that we did. So if you want to hear about that, you can always go back to the beginning. I'm just running a little test here to see if my computer can actually handle streaming a draft. It seems to be going well so far. So you should take Russell Wilson, George Pickens, Najee Harris, and Jaylen Warren. No, I mean, if you think they can make the Super Bowl, then you definitely can do that. I've taken some Steelers as like secondary stacks. If you think it, I think sometimes people get too caught up on the best players rather than the best teams. So the thing that matters the most is like, what is a team's odds of making the Super Bowl? And the best odds would be the Lions and the Chiefs because they're the presumed 1 seeds. You see that, okay, the 2 Lions both went. So that kind of sucks. I can take Saquon if I want to do an Eagles build. Yeah, that's fine. Sure, I'll do an Eagle. I'll do an Eagles one. So we'll take Saquon Barkley. So now I know that I need to take Eagles players because I'm assuming the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. So I need to queue up Eagles players so I can take those. And now I have to get an AFC team. Now, my ideal pick would be the Chiefs. So if Jalen Hurts comes back to me, I'll take Jalen Hurts. He probably will not because this guy took A.J. Brown. So this guy's probably going to take A.J. Brown and then Jalen Hurts. And my hope is I can go Mahomes and then probably get Devonta Smith on the way back. And then I'll have myself set up for a little Eagles-Chiefs rematch in the Super Bowl, which is certainly possible. It's probably one of the 5 or 6 most likely combinations at this point. Like, just if you run the numbers. So let's see what we got here. Maybe the A.J. Brown guy will do something else. Nope, he goes Hurts. Derrick Henry drafter is going to take Lamar. Okay, so I'm going to grab Mahomes here. Now Mahomes is probably going to have the bye. I'm gonna play it out at least like he's going to have the bye. So I'm going to need to take a second quarterback so I can get through that first round. So I'll probably take Devonta Smith here. Now I got to queue up my Chiefs players. There's a lot of Chiefs players you can take throughout the draft. So even if I get sniped on Kelsey or something, it's probably fine. Hollywood Brown might even come back. I could even mix in some Noah Gray, possibly. I have to take Devonta Smith here, though, because I know that the other Eagles guy is over here, and I don't want him to take him. This Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs drafter might take Kelsey. But he could also take Zay Flowers, which I would like. Okay, he took Laporta. I'm going to take Devonta Smith. Someone's going to go Kelsey in here and ruin my day. This guy's probably going to do it. And I can't blame him. But if I could get Pacheco, that would be cool. Okay, Josh Allen, James Cook drafter should go NFC here. Jefferson. And what? Oh, take Amari Cooper. Yeah, okay. He took Amari Cooper. So most of the... Oh, there goes Pacheco. That sucks. I would have liked to get him. All right, well, we're going to go Hopkins here. Grab a Chief. So we've got 4 players in our potential Super Bowl matchup here. We want to get at least 5, obviously, but we can take more than that. I'm going to try to grab Goddard here on the next pick. I'm pretty much screwed no matter what I do with this guy because he's got Eagles, Chiefs, and I got Eagles, Chiefs. So I'm just going to have to decide what matters more. Maybe I'd rather... No, I'd rather build it up through Eagles on this side because they're not going to get the bye. And Xavier Worthy's he's going to take Worthy, but like Worthy's not so much better than the other options. So I'll probably take one more Chief, and then I need to figure out another team I'm going to stack up. Oh, somebody tagged me in something. Okay. I don't know what Sherm is doing. He's not in the stream. So I need to stack up another team here because I'm not just going to take Eagles and Chiefs all the way through, and I do need to get another quarterback. So I have liked doing Packers, but Josh Jacobs already went, so I wouldn't be able to get that running back. I also like doing Chargers a lot. And if I do Chargers, if I do it correctly, then I'll be able to set up another stack that could potentially work if the Eagles and the Chargers made the Super Bowl, which obviously is not like a highly likely outcome, but it is very possible. So if we set that up here, we can go McConkey and Herbert and I don't know, QJ or Disley or something. So McConkey, Hollywood, Herbert, QJ. We've got 4 picks left. Those could be our 4 picks right there if we do it right. And so basically, this is like a format that works best if you're willing to draft a lot of teams, because you can form all these different configurations, and some of them are going to get lucky and get through. Some of them are going to get unlucky. Why did he take Herbert? Why would you do that? And then okay, well, that's great. Sometimes people will just really screw with you, man. That was so stupid of him to take just totally uncorrelated Herbert. He has Stroud with Dell and Collins. He had no reason to take Herbert, and I'm still going to take McConkey from him. So good luck with that one, idiot. So it is kind of good that people don't know what they're doing, but also it kind of messes you up sometimes. Now, it's okay. It does take away that potential outcome of Chargers-Eagles Super Bowl, but I can still get a quarterback here. I'll probably go Jaden Daniels and then grab McLaurin if I can. Jaden Daniels. Okay. Then I still need my last Chief. This guy's probably got enough Chiefs here. Oh, there goes McLaurin. Oh, brother. All right, well, I just need a quarterback. So it's not ideal, but I just need a quarterback to get me through the first round here. Maybe I'll go Kyler Marvin Harrison stack, I guess. Could do that. With the 49ers probably losing this weekend, Brock Purdy's out. That puts the Cardinals another game up on the puts the Cardinals up another game. And I would just rather stack than get Daniels with nobody, because if you're going to get him through to another round, you'd rather have an extra player with him. I could take like Drake London plus Kirk Cousins, but I think I prefer the single game ceiling of Kyler with Marv as opposed to London with Cousins. I just think I prefer that. If the Falcons make the playoffs, it'll be as the 3 seed. So that would make them most likely to face the Commanders, actually, I think. All right, so we're going to close this thing out. I don't think I need to worry about taking Kyler until my last pick. So I'm just going to grab Hollywood just in case this guy decides to add one more Chief. And then I will take Kyler at the end. All right. So anyway, that is how the contest works. My favorite teams right now are just the good ones, honestly. I'm drafting a lot of the teams that have the highest probabilities to make the playoffs. Bills and Chiefs are really strong bets to make the Super Bowl. The Lions, obviously. The Eagles are fine to me. I think they're a little overpriced. The Packers and the Chargers are the two like later teams that I think are really interesting, just because they have the quarterback play, they have good coaching, they have good defenses. I think they have a little bit better odds than the ADP is giving them, and they're also like good offenses in general. So those are the teams that I've been mostly targeting. But you know, I'll mix in, like I mixed in a Cardinal stack here. You can mix in a Falcon stack, mix in Steelers. Ravens are good if you can get Lamar and Henry together. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm not really interested in like, I'm not too interested in the Texans. I don't really think they have the legs to go the distance. I'm not really interested in the Steelers as like a primary stack. I'm not really interested in the Vikings that way. So, you know, I think that there's a limited number of teams that really have realistic odds of making the Super Bowl. So I'm sticking to those for the most part. Whoa. All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Again, thanks guys for coming and hanging out. Thanks for humoring me there with the draft. I know that's not the usual Dynasty stuff. Excited to wrap up this startup mock. And yeah, I'll be back soon with more stuff. I'll see you guys in the Discord. Have a good night, everybody.